welcome Ron Nevo from CPacket, CTO of CPacket. It's great to get a chance to talk to you. I've become more and more familiar with what CPacket's doing, so this is a great chance for me to grill you a little bit, find out more, and just talk about the tech industry in general, as that's always an interesting topic. So thanks very much.
Appreciate you having me there. It's great to have opportunity to talk.
Yeah. Now you work in CPacket works in a really, I consider it a very interesting area because, I've been working in the IT business for, I don't know, 100 years or so. And my background is in storage, but I've worked some things in compute. But when you start bringing up the topic of networking, people get nervous. They say,
Right.
I can do anything, but I don't do networking. And the last, especially the last 10 or 20 years, both compute and storage have really transformed in many ways. And networking still looks a lot like it used to look. Am I missing something? Has it changed? And how is it going to change in the next few years? What's new with networking?
I don't know if it changed. I mean, I've been in networking for pretty much the 100 years. And I remember when I started in Qualcomm, they were saying, everything, and that's, probably the middle of 90s. They said, well, everything that used to go on cable now is in the air, and everything that was in the air is now going on cable, right? So TV was going to cable TV, and, communication was going on mobile phones. I think now, 20 years beyond that, everything is everywhere, right? So you kind of, it's all there. I think there was a time probably when Wi-Fi was introduced where people were getting to the point, well, if it computes, it connects, right? There was also this kind of transition. Today, with the internet and things, they just assume that everything is connected, right? Nobody thinks that things are not connected. And connected means that it's networked, right? And it can be at 100 gig if you're inside the data center. It can be wireless if you're somewhere. But people just think about it today as, I think if one thing changed is that people perceive networking as a utility, right? They think it's just obvious that it's there and don't really appreciate the complexities of actually making it work.
Yeah, it's kind of like infrastructure,
Yes.
It took me a while. It took me actually spending time in Africa before I realized that roads actually had to be paved.
Right.
Yes. And once it's not like
Exactly.
that, you realize, oh, wow, this is a lot of work. I think,
right.
IT infrastructure is the same. It's easy to take for granted. And I think,
but you remember in the beginning of the 2000, if you wanted to connect, you had to buy a PCMCIA card of a Wi-Fi and plug it in and look for a hotspot, right? People don't do that today, right? They just the laptop, they open it and it's connected. And, right?
Or even worse, I'd show up in a hotel room and there would be a telephone that I had to connect with a timer so that I wouldn't be on the modem for too long, right?
Right. So, and listening to the beeps there, right? So.
Yeah, and I think networking was originally designed, or at least the sort of TCP/IP networking was designed, with servers and clients in mind, and now it's becoming devices, and it's becoming, things, Internet of Things. It's becoming, and so now it's like either you abstract it into many devices, or you find a way to attach a networking endpoint to a person. It's kind of a tricky thing. So it's also, I guess, changes security as well. The balance between access and, having security. How do you see that change in the last years?
Yeah, I think the point is that, there is another thing, right? It used to be, okay, you have a server and you connect it to a server and you download it. Today, an application is something that consists of many, many applications. So, we have customers that run, we serve a lot with the big banks and their portal is actually 2,700 applications that talk to each other. And the security now becomes, you and all these other applications that talk to each other. And this continuous authentication is one of the things that they have to pay attention to, both from security as well as from performance, because you might go back and forth to the security server, not just once to authenticate you, but every single applications. And that generates not only security concerns, of course, but also performance issues and user experience issues.
Hmm. Yeah, and of course, security is never finished. It's never a topic that you solve. It's a continuous process. And so, your company now, CPacket, is basically it's not just security; it's also performance and looking through all these sorts of things. But tell me a little bit about how the approach is to security and performance as well. But we can start with one of those topics.
Yeah, in general, what we do is I would say, enable security. We're not CPacket itself is not a security company, but what we find is that in order to have a high quality security tool, you really have to have high quality data. So one thing that we are doing is the ability to provide very high quality, meaning we are not losing packets. We're able to prepare the packets, whether we are working in the data center at 100 gigabits per second, or in the cloud through the different utilities that Azure provides, or AWS or GCP. And you need the same security tools. They're all kind of built on ability to receive packets, receive the packets they need at the time they need, and process them. So that's kind of one thing that is not trivial to achieve, essentially, especially when you talk about hybrid environments where the services might run at 100 gigabits per second in a data center, but they might have some other services that they run in the cloud, or even third-party services. So that's one thing that has to happen. So it's kind of a foundational capability to have any security solution. The second part is really forensics. So once a tool identifies an anomaly and says, okay, there is something weird here, that you have to investigate further. You basically escalate to level 3, or however they refer to it. And that, again, it's about going back to the packets and looking at what exactly happened. Mm-hmm. And the ability to store the packets, again, without losing them, and providing them back to the investigator is another critical part that we provide to them. So I would say we have a lot of partners with the security companies. We're not necessarily a security company itself, but we certainly partner with them to provide a complete solution as they go after their customers.
Yeah. Okay. And how is that? Like, what is the challenge in that? Like, for instance, you had a blog post that I thought was really interesting, where you distinguish between events, flows, and packets, right? The advantages and disadvantages or risks of each kind. And I like the way you framed it. Like, tracking events is basically tracking known unknowns. Things you already know you should be looking for. You put something in advance. But it seems like actually being able to capture and analyze all of the packets is ideal, right? Then you have all the information in there, the source of truth. Why isn't that an approach that people do by default? Why hasn't that been the case up till now?
Sure. The complexity is orders of magnitude more. When you do flows, it's really about counting packets in a given time slice. Time slice can be very short or can be very long. And what you need to do is you can just run counters, and you can implement it in a router or a switch relatively cheaply. Still, it still takes some time, and people will revert to sampling and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you need to keep two numbers. In order to look at the packets, you need to do a lot more. You have to actually analyze the packet for a longer time. You have to keep things like the last acknowledgement, so you're able to measure things like round trip time. You have to measure things like retransmissions. That requires a lot more memory, a lot more resources, and a little more innovation in how you do things. So I would say this is the main reason that people kind of reverted to lowest common denominators, which are flows, instead of investing in actually packet analysis. Mm-hmm. So you would see packet analysis for security tools. Security tools couldn't really, they didn't have an option. They have to look at the packets. Yeah. But collecting packets in order to understand why a user calls and complains that something is slow, or that he cannot connect, or that the quality is poor, was not there before, or it's very little that they have that.
And I guess that's the what we were kind of talking about with infrastructure, that people don't notice it until it's not doing the thing they expect.
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
the person who makes the trains run on time, you don't know he exists until the trains aren't running on time.
Yeah, and I'm amazed how if somebody does call, then the way that many, very big and sophisticated companies do that, they have essentially like one guy in the company that they call him in for OLP1, and then he, collects packets here, there, and another, and some black magic, and after 3 weeks he says, okay, that's the solution.
Yeah.
But there is no, many cases I come in, there are no tools, there is no methodology. It's very amazing how things work.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And I guess anytime you're, selling or providing a new technology or or solving a new problem, my experience at least has been that the biggest competition is doing nothing.
Right.
Exactly. I love this thing. This is great. And then nothing, do you see that? What is the mindset behind that? And what is the consequence of that sort of approach when it comes to security and performance in this case?
Well, so security, it's obvious. We've just seen the big incident the last few weeks, right? That's priceless, right? I mean, the damage that a security incident can do for you is priceless, right? Even in the current case, nobody knows if they haven't left other bots there that will wake up in 2 years, and then they will cause the damage, right? So you basically really don't know what you don't know. I think from what we're seeing more on the performance or user experience side is it manifests itself in many places. So for example, if you are trying to be an agile business and you're trying to introduce new services and more services, what you'll see from the organization is a lot of friction, because the people kind of make sure that what they know today stays the same. So they will say, oh, I don't know if I can introduce it because I think our firewalls are too loaded. So I don't want you to introduce this new service until I run whatever, right? So every time you're trying to be agile and introduce business faster or new services faster, you get pushback from the operations team because they don't know. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing, that if you don't have visibility, you just are very cautious and you slow down everything. On the other hand, you lose productivity, right? So if you have a big hospital and you have doctors that wait for an X-ray and just give up and go to the next, either they stay there and lose time, or they go to the next one because they're frustrated, Actually, the nicest thing I see that is very easy for us, we work a lot, again, with the financial trading companies and the ultra low latency. They know exactly, because they can count at the end of the day how many trades failed because they failed to receive packets on time. So there it's measurable. And even there, it's interesting because we work with the service providers there, and they need to increase the capacity of the WANs. And so they have their sales guys saying, oh, I want more and more. And their operations guys say, no, it's too expensive. And, they just stand there and like, okay, I don't know. Do I need to buy another WAN? I don't need. Should I wait for the failures? And again, without data, you just get into this ever going, discussions without being able to move forward.
Yeah.
So I would say it's both the loss of productivity if something does happen, as well as just agility of the business as you plan and move forward.
Yeah, and I suppose in the finance sector, you can often put a direct price tag on these things. It makes it a little bit easier to talk about, but there's so many ways in which everybody suffers those costs. It's just that it's a little harder to put a number on it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, every business has something that you can think about it as transaction, right? If you're a hospital, that's doctor's hours. If it's a website, it's how much time it takes you to go through the page and move to the next one. So most businesses at the end of the day can think about a transaction, and this loss of productivity if a transaction takes too much time or more time, and the frustration associated with that. Is essentially what they benefit by actually investing in tools to give them visibility.
Yeah.
Another side is churn. I mean, and again, with financial services is very easy to see because their customers are also sophisticated and can measure. But we see it with service providers too. People kind of get frustrated and things don't work, so they just jump to the next service provider because it's very easy. and they hope that the next one will give them something less frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess more and more services are being spread everywhere, right?
Exactly.
They literally called microservices even, so they're in the cloud, on premise, in different clouds. How are you seeing companies dealing with that complexity that's basically emerging and growing now?
That's a good question. So, I mean, I would say that for the most part, I see people taking advantage. I don't think they see this complexity. I think it's a big advantage for them. Sorry. It's their ability to, for every little thing, they're able to choose from a multitude of offerings, whether it's their own services or third-party services. So for the most part, it's an advantage. Again, I think the big issue, it's the end where you bring it all together and somebody complains, and now you have such a complex infrastructure and offerings that it's hard to pinpoint where the problem is. But just from the pure advantage of today, being able to get things from the cloud or as a service is a great opportunity for businesses.
Yeah, no, that's something that in all aspects has been a challenge, from managing data, from, like I said, networking is a challenge for many IT professionals.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I started my tech career way back in the 90s, middle of the dot-com bubble. I was very young and impressionable and didn't know what was going on, but coincidentally landed in the middle of like what was probably one of the most amazing periods of time.
Right.
I think around that time you were working at Qualcomm, which I happened to go to university right next to where they were being founded.
Right.
So also very familiar. But what I find interesting is how you basically see the same things repeating themselves, even today. Back then it was, networks, TCP/IP networking and IP address. People would argue about token rings and all kinds of things we don't talk about. Yeah, we were still using VHS tapes as well. And then pretty soon, the Mosaic browser came out, and it just today it's just not even talked about. It's online. That's it. We don't even say internet anymore. How do you see these cycles repeating themselves? Do you see some of the same things back then happening now, and in particular in the areas where you're working in networking and security and performance?
Yeah, I think I mean, we're still dealing with the same problems. It's just faster.
Yeah.
When I started, having a few hundred kilobits per second modem, wireless modem was amazing, right? Now we're talking 100 gig. And as soon as we get to the 100 gig, people are asking us if we're 400 gig. But I think, yes, we fundamentally try to solve the same problems, which is the user experience at the end of the day is either it's too slow and they want it faster, or the quality is not there, and you get broken video or broken audio, or threads are missing.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can't connect. It's like, hey, I can't connect. And that was true in 2000. It's true today, right? It's like, going to this website doesn't connect. So I think that's just faster.
Yeah.
And you have to build. I would say the security is somewhat different. I mean, I think, when we started in 2000 or the late 90s, people realized all of a sudden that nobody when they designed TCP/IP in the internet, they thought about security, and things started. Today, the security attacks and the security protection is a lot more sophisticated than then. But I would say from the fundamental of how you connect, the same problem, just faster.
Yeah. I mean, and in a way, I think what I've learned from that and what I've learned since then is that the technology is actually the easy part. The inventing the tech is that's done in 1 year or something. It's I think like what really is the challenge with adoption is trust. Just that people trust it. Like, back in the 90s, nobody could imagine using a credit card to pay for something online from a person you never met. And now people do that. They even, on their phone, they don't even know they're paying anymore. It just happens automatically. And then the other, of course, are the established people, the established powers that are threatened by the new technology. You know, I think the telephone companies were one at one time. You know, in the music industry, you had record publishers, and then Spotify is kind of taken that over. And so I think we'll see that with blockchain. I mean, for instance, that the technology is actually kind of simple. You know, blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of works. It's great.
Right.
There's a lot of trust that has to happen, and you know, obviously, you know, there's some applications and things like that. But it reminds me a lot of TCP/IP 25 years ago or something like that. Are you seeing companies adopting or experimenting with these sorts of like new technologies that are not quite sure what to do? Or have you seen this in practice?
Yeah, we certainly see. Yes, absolutely, we see that. I think it's trust, but also the other thing is convenience. I think once people enjoy the convenience, they will actually sacrifice a lot of the security, right? Nobody cares about his privacy when they can post whatever on Facebook, right? So to me, the technology is there. It's really about making it simple to use and convenient.
Yeah.
So that's again, if you go to the simple PCMCIA card of the Wi-Fi, right? That you had to be a geek to understand that part. But now that you open and Starbucks just connects you, everybody does that, right? So I think that's where we're seeing today coming in. And if we go back to the no consumption, kind of the other side is for the companies that introduce that, I think, there is the technology to make things work. There is the technology to debug things when they don't work and deploy tools that give you the visibility when things don't work. And to me, the one exciting thing that is happening today is really the AI machine learning that should take the tools and not only help you figure out what's not working, but also gives you the answer, or at least an approximate answer of what went wrong, which will kind of take the tools to the next level, right? It's the tools should be easy for you to use, but you still, if you debug issues, you still have to be a pretty sophisticated user. Being able to just tell you, okay, here's what we think is wrong, and you just need to validate it is the next level, and that's the next challenge from deploying technology to solve technology problems, right? Which is where CPacket is.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, you mentioned big data. That's a great one because that's also probably an enabler and an accelerator of this scale. You know, the amounts of data that we're talking about are absurd. You know, they're unheard of before. They always say you see these sort of Gartner type stats that say the last 2 years more data has been generated than in all of history before it. And then the next year you hear the very same thing again. So either it's like doubling in that time, or it's amazing. And the technologies that have come with it.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about 100 gigabits per second networks, it's not only the speed, it's also the amount of data that you have to sift through, right? 1 second generates 100 gigabit, or 10 gigabyte of data. That's 1 second. And you're talking now a session that can take a day or whatnot. Yeah. Many terabytes of data to sift through and find what the relevant data is.
Yeah, which is of course the business NVIDIA is in now. Really launched a company like NVIDIA. It's absolutely
right.
Cool. And what's interesting too is that I know it's true for me, but I'm a bit of a geek. But I think an individual person probably has as much or more data as an entire corporation did 15 years ago. And so some of these problems are becoming very personal. I'm trying to figure out why I have 100 copies of the same file in my hard drive or my Dropbox even. So
I just have iCloud complaining that I'm exhausting my my storage there and wants me to upgrade.
Yeah, and when you go in there, you're going to find, I actually made a backup copy of this directory 4 different times.
Right.
So,
actually, one of my early manager, I think he was probably my first manager, told me, hey, when my hard drives gets full, I know that it's time to upgrade.
Yeah.
He's like, I never delete any email. He's like, yeah, that's probably time to upgrade your computer. And I pretty much follow that. I never delete emails because you probably should just upgrade. I mean, now everything is in the cloud, so it's not even an issue. But
Yeah, no, it's absolutely an archive now, and it's true. I'm kind of the same way. I don't delete anything. I don't even upgrade. It just seems like Gmail seems to upgrade itself
Yeah,
at the right moment. So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's one of the things that changed, right? You don't really keep your email locally anymore, right? It's
no,
just you trust Google that will be there when you need it, and
yeah, yeah.
you
So
move
it's
on.
a matter of time, I think, before the technologies that we're working on become B2C, become consumer technologies, because
Yeah,
it's just everything's gone digital lately. So, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of you say, well, if it's the same, yeah, I think it is the same, but you also look on, I still remember getting on an airplane and you had to have the paper ticket with you, and if you lost it was a big deal. Right now, you just
I had that
your
once.
phone, and yeah.
I actually packed my ticket into my suitcase by accident and checked it in, and then I couldn't get on the flight.
Right.
Those were the
So,
days.
and it was what, less than 20 years ago, right? I
Yeah,
mean, for us it looks like a short time. I guess for our kids, like, yeah, it's like,
yeah,
what are you guys talking about? But
ancient
I
history.
still remember that.
Yeah. You had an interesting career path as well. You're from Israel, but you've been living and working in the U.S. in Oregon, in Portland for the last 20 years or so. What's that been like? What's the difference working in Israel in the tech business and working in California? Sorry, in Oregon. I'm California biased myself, but what's the differences like? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, actually, I think people here start career at 18. I after at 18, I also had, 4 years in the army, not touching computers at all, and another year hiking in South America. So I also took the time to kind of get out of my system all the other things you can do before you actually go and become an engineer.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and then I worked actually in Qualcomm. I was still in Israel, and then I moved for Mobilian, which was a startup in Portland, and grew up here. I think the difference is actually I see it even if I go from Portland, Oregon to California, the intensity goes up. I
yeah,
think people here in Portland have a much better work-life balance perspective of the world. It's hiking, and people are much more laid back. Every time, I spend a lot of time, of course, in Silicon Valley, and I can feel the intensity goes up as I go there. People are just, and if I go back to Israel, or when I go back to Israel, the intensity goes up even higher. It's always funny to me when I fly to Israel. It's kind of, as you fly east, you stop in New York.
yeah,
So, if you go in Portland, when you used to go to a restaurant and you ask for something, there is a whole small talk before they ask you what you want.
yeah.
You go to New York, they ask you what do you want, right? And in Israel, it's like, why didn't you tell them already what you want? It's like, so you feel the intensity, and it's everywhere. So it's, when you buy something in the store, and also when you kind of the speed of people going through and working and talking.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I found well, I've also moved. I basically grew up and worked in California, and now I'm in the Netherlands in Europe, and I work a lot with Israeli companies as well, and I can see that there is a difference, like the West Coast U.S. indirectness. Everything's great, everything's great, everything's great, and then suddenly something's not good. And
right.
with Israel, everything's terrible, everything's terrible,
Yeah.
everything's terrible. Actually, everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I remember it's like, oh, this desk is a mess. You really need to move this mouse to here, and
Yeah.
now it's okay.
If an Israeli colleague or a customer or client says to me, it's not the worst, I take that as a high compliment. Like, all
Right.
right, I did it.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've nothing to complain.
yeah, exactly. So,
It's
uh,
the highest. That's the highest you're gonna get.
yeah. And the other, it may not be so much in Oregon as it is in California, but I find also that in the Silicon Valley, you're very much on the supply side of things. Like the focus is on the technology and the technology building, and when you leave there, it's really on the customer and how the customer what the needs actually are. So have you seen that difference? Like if you get out of the center of innovation, how do your interactions change with people?
No, I think even in Silicon Valley, I think people understand today that the user. It's going back to what we said before, which is the ease of use. So even I think today in Silicon Valley, there is huge amount of investment in hiring design engineer and user experience engineers, and people understand for the most part that if people cannot use your technology, they will not use it.
Yeah.
So actually, I think in the last, 5 or maybe 10 years, the investment in user experience went pretty high, and people do talk about it. Successful or not, you can argue, but they certainly try and put a lot of effort. I think Apple basically exposed it, right, or educated everyone, right? Because if you think about the iPhone, I remember, phones that you could touch years before the iPhone, right? It was the ability that you can actually use it that made the difference between the technology of a screen you could touch, right? So I think certainly I would say Apple showed people that I don't know if it's all about user experience, but it's very important. It's more than the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, when you are on the demand side of things, that's one thing I learned when I moved to Europe. Everybody was a customer. Is that you have to start out with the actual, you have to understand the actual problem they're trying to solve, and then figure out what technology comes in. Whereas when I would go back to headquarters and spend a week, you go out to a bar, and even in the bar, the conversation is about Linux or networking or something like that. So that's a very different approach. So personally, I love being on the customer side of things, on the demand side. Yeah. So one big topic, and it's like a regular question I ask everybody, because obviously it's in our interest. We're Cloud Native X. We're very much focused in this area that's called Cloud Native. But I find that if I ask 5 people what Cloud Native means, I'll get 10 answers.
Yeah.
No one's really sure what it means. It means, I think it started out meaning exactly how it sounded, things born in the cloud. And then, it became a specific thing around microservices. And then, as we go on, I think even that changes again, what that means. What does that term mean for you when you hear Cloud Native? What do you think of, and what should it mean?
Yeah, no, I can probably talk about that for a long time. So, so I think there are multiple ways to. So most of our customers, I would say, our big customers are Fortune 500 companies that own their data centers, understand networking, invest a lot of both networks and servers in the data center, and are going through this transition to the cloud, right? So a lot of that is probably painted from my experience working with our customers. So I think there is the kind of the very technical level that says, okay, I want you to take the applications that used to run and manage in the data center, and I want to take advantage of the cloud, right? And then what does it mean? So does that mean that you're gonna just, spin up a VM in the cloud and do the exact same? Or are you gonna rewrite the applications to take advantage of something that is in the cloud? Or are you gonna redesign your application to really rethink the application and start from the scale of the cloud and take advantage for that? So even there I see at least 3 grades, and of course there is a lot of gradients between the two, just thinking about the applications. And then as you move things over to the cloud, we're calling it Cloud Smart, or I guess that's a terminology. It's like, can I move everything? And if I can't move everything because regulatory or security or performance considerations or any set of reasons, what do I do with the things that stayed in the data center and how they're going to play?
Yeah,
that would be the second kind of thought process and technology challenge that they're going through. And the third one is really this multi-service, multi-vendor environment, and what does that mean to my business and security and user experience, and how all of that comes together. So I'd say cloud native in the application space is really about, are you just taking some advantage of not storing packets locally, but you're storing them on S3, or redesigning your application such that they take advantage from the ground up from the capability of the cloud? Yeah. But then how this cloud native applications play in my overall user experience, and what is it that I'm trying to do as a business, is another aspect of thinking about what's going to the cloud, but doesn't go, how to think about the cloud, and how to work with that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one direction. Another one specifically for us is really the networking. So a lot of companies that grew up on the cloud, I think they're used to run their business with a redundancy and build and they design their business such that they don't really know about the network, and they let the network or the cloud provider own the network, and they kind of designed around it. What we see again with our customers is that doesn't work for them. Again, maybe they haven't designed the application correctly, or maybe there's other good reasons. And then when it got to the friction between the cloud provider and their application, it becomes tricky. So what is the information? What is the native information? What are the information that provide back to AWS to solve a problem, or GCP? And we're seeing a lot of friction today where the cloud provider says, well, it is what it is. And then the customer is trying to get capture and provide them proof that it's not what they say it is. And so that's certainly a lot of friction that we're seeing today just around the connectivity in the cloud and getting their services to run in the cloud. So that's, I would say, the third thing that comes in mind in cloud native.
And
when you say cloud native.
There is indeed a lot of complexity because every cloud provider has a different set of networking protocols or networking, details, and on-premise, of course. This is really, if you're not in networking, you can easily underestimate how how complex it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some physics, right? I mean, if your data center is in Denver and you're in, AWS on the West Coast, that's 20 milliseconds just there. And if you do it too many times, just because the way you design your application, all of a sudden users can feel the latency.
Yeah. And of course,
it's beyond, issues. It's just sometimes really geography that you can do nothing about it if you haven't, again, designed your application to be cloud native or take into consideration both the nativeness and the geography, right?
Yeah. And of course, even one action or one thing that you do on the internet has like hundreds of processes underneath it, that if each one of those is 20 milliseconds too slow, that adds up very quickly.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, great. So what are cPacket's plans going forward? You guys are well positioned. You have basically a platform that enables anybody to kind of, capture and know everything they need to know about their network. Looks like you're keeping up with the scale and the way things are changing. Does cPacket have interesting plans going forward in the coming year?
Yeah, no, I think it kind of goes back. So we are always in the business of providing technology to solve technology problems. So a lot of the investment was around in the last 3 years was really and I think going back to the beginning of the discussion, you mentioned that a lot of the challenges we usually have is that people don't even know that they can use technology to solve technology problems, right? Yeah. So it was about building tools that are easy to use, right? A huge amount of the high quality data was always there, but being able to show them a very simple dashboard or a workflow that can help them really quickly solve a problem was a lot of investment. Going forward is really about taking all these amounts of data that we collect, primarily from Packet-based, complementing it for more with data from events. So, server KPIs is one thing, but events from syslog and others, correlate everything and provide them with, I would say, phase 1, relevant alerts, phase 2 with a solution. When one of the things that people like us or, tools similar to us say, they tell the customers, we can provide you alerts. And the first reaction we get is, I don't need more alerts. I have 100,000 of these. Don't provide me alerts. Yeah. That's not what I need. But relevant alerts is very important. And relevant alerts is pretty tricky because you can come in today to a network and I can tell them, you have 100,000 retransmissions on your network. It's like, well, nobody called me, so it's not a problem. So don't tell me about it. Now, if it's go to a level that somebody is going to call me, then I want you to tell me before he calls me. But otherwise, I don't want to hear. So a lot of the investment we're doing today, and that's probably what is going to take a lot of our attention in the next 3 years, is applying AI machine learning algorithms to understand what's relevant, right? What is the level by which is normal and I can move on? Maybe, in some maintenance cycle, they will go back and fix it, or maybe they're not. But if I see every day around noon that somebody's, for whatever reason, the Outlook server is being loaded, I can tell him, in a week or in 3 weeks or in a month, somebody's going to call you around noon because something is going on there. So being able to understand what's going on, understand how it connects to actual humans and when he's going to get the call, and alert ahead of time, that's the effort that we're putting in, right? So it's not just giving them great tools to be able to do the work on their own, but really guiding them through the problem and the solution before they even, got the call, right? They basically don't want to get a call from someone.
Yeah. Now, I like that approach. One of my favorite sayings is, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, right? So,
Exactly.
Yeah. Using the data, and of course, such an opportunity, right? Doing
right.
The machine. I don't know if you have machine learning in mind and things like this, but anything that's repetitive, I think, is also becoming a growing industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Machine learning, I mean, there are different ways you can go, but certainly machine learning and the scale. So a lot of what we're doing is we're moving some of the analytics engine we have today to the cloud, such that we can scale it to that level, and really being able to absorb the huge amounts of data that we get today. So today we deploy, tens and hundreds of sensors in a network that can be on cloud, or can be in the data centers, running at very high speeds, getting all this data, sift through that to identify the one relevant alert a day is a very, very tough technical problem.
Yeah.
And making it simple, that's the hard thing.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I really appreciate the time, because this is, like I said, this is a topic we could probably go on for ages.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if in 3 months we could talk again, and there'll be new things even. So this is super interesting. I think it'll be interesting also for our viewers. Obviously, we're focused on the users. The Cloud Native X is really about connecting also non-technical people to this topic, because there's plenty of resources for developers out there. But I think this context is something that's really important. So look forward to seeing much more from CPacket, and hopefully speaking with you again soon for an update.
Sure. Thank you. It was great. It was a pleasure.
Right.
We should exchange more experiences from the 90s and early aughts, right? That's always fun to remember how technology worked then.
A couple old guys talking war stories. That's fun, man.
Yeah,
Great. All right. Well, thanks very much, Ron. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Yep. And speak soon.